The dialogue.
The dialogue.
The dialogue.
The dialogue.
The dialogue.
The dialogue.
Radio Free 102.3 KJLH.
Good morning. Good morning, Front Page family. How y'all feeling this morning? Happy Cesar Chavez Day. Today, March 31st, we celebrate the birthday and legacy of the civil rights and later labor movement leader. I'm your guest host, Starlett Quarles, and today's conversation is on gentrification. And this is such a hot topic these days because it's happening in so many of our urban communities across the country, and we're definitely experiencing it here on the West Coast because so many of our communities just don't look the same. From South LA to Inglewood and even throughout the Crenshaw district, many of our Black destination places and neighborhoods here in Los Angeles are almost unrecognizable. Not only from the influx of retail, excuse me, I'm catching a cold. It ain't COVID though. Oh. It ain't.
I say, where's my mask?
About to run out the studio.
No, it's just the morning. It's just the morning. Okay, not only from the influx of retail and housing developments, but also from the major shift in our demographics. Have you seen your neighbors lately? So what can we do about it? Because gentrification is going to happen whether we like it or not. It's just a natural process of urban renewal. And I believe we need to begin to embrace, prepare for it, strategize around it, and redefine gentrification for our generation. But before we can do that, we have to better understand exactly what is it, because gentrification is seen and defined differently. So I have a couple of definitions here. According to Webster, gentrification is the process of renewal and rebuilding, accompanying the influx of middle class or affluent people into deteriorating areas that often displaces poor residents. However, Wikipedia's definition is a bit more culturally specific. Gentrification is a trend in urban neighborhoods which results in an increased property values and the displacing of lower income families and small businesses. It refers to shifts in an urban community lifestyle and an increasing share of wealthier residents and or businesses. Now, why does Wikipedia define gentrification as a, quote, shift in an urban community lifestyle, end quote? And we all know what they mean by urban, right? Do you know what they mean? Black folks. So, to help us better understand gentrification and how to prepare for it, we have invited some great guests on today for our show. Let's talk about gentrification. But let me first ask you guys, Bobo and Dorian, how has gentrification, I mean, we were talking yesterday.
Yeah.
About just the rent increases here and how much we were just talking about how a one bedroom in the jungle is $1,600.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, you know, living out here in LA, it's expensive. It's, you know, and the cost of, not just the cost of living, but, you know, the wages don't really compensate that. You know, like we were talking about earlier, like I told you earlier, how I used to live out in the valley and I could get a 2-bedroom for about $1,700.
That's crazy.
You know, when out here, a 1-bed is 16.
And they're small.
Yeah.
It's small. It's not even like a lot of space.
No, it's a little over 600 square feet.
That's crazy.
A little over 100. And mind you, in my process of searching for a place, there's places even out here in Inglewood, at minimum for a 1-bedroom, they wanted $2,000.
That is crazy. Bubba, yesterday, you were talking about your neighborhood. So how has gentrification impacted your neighborhood, and how you feel about that?
I mean, it sucks. There's no way to say it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a house down the street from where I live that literally sold for almost $1 million.
Wow. And where is this area then? This is South LA.
This is South LA. This is like in the USC area, and the house is like ridiculous. Like it's a big house, but the lady bought it for like close to $1 million, and it's ridiculous. Like the fact that this is a neighborhood that I grew up in. I've moved around it's always been within a 2-mile radius of where I live, from Western and Vernon to Lamert Park to where I am now by USC. It's always been pretty close, and it's just ridiculous that the prices are so unaffordable if you ever want to buy a house. It's like, and even as Dorian was just saying, to even rent a home, you rather have to rent a home or have a car. It's not both. And if you do have a car, it's an old jalopy or something like that, because you're not going to be able to, especially on a minimum wage job, afford $1,600 a month rent and have a $400 car note. Let's not even mention if you have kids.
Right.
Because I have a 16-year-old son, and I have a godson who's 16, and they're both pretty damn expensive.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And you living over in that area, I'm sure you've seen the change in demographics. What does it look like now from when you grew up?
Man, I saw, I'm not one to sound racist, but I saw this white dude ride his bike down the street, and he goes, "Hey, how you doing?" And I was like,
no hear his voice.
No, but I was excited that somebody spoke because, I mean, I've been living over there for like 10 years, and normally people just look at you and go, like, what?
You get side-eye.
But then this guy was like, "Hey, like, how's it going?" And then I remember once, maybe like a couple years ago, my neighbor who I actually developed a relation, like a cool friendship with, like a whatever, like I know the guy.
Yeah.
And he was pushing his car out of his driveway, and it was just me and him, and it was a Cadillac. And as we were pushing the car, another guy comes walking on. "Hey, you guys need some help? I'm going to park my bike." He was on a bicycle. Like, "I'm going to park my bike."
You see the change in his tone? We know you're talking about something.
Dude, but like, and he literally got out and helped us. Like, "All right, you guys have a good day. If you guys ever need me, I'm right down the street."
So what would have happened back in the day?
Oh man, they
would have been stranded.
Oh, absolutely. They would have just walked
It
by.
was me and him pushing his big old Cadillac.
Right.
Okay, so that's a good point. So are you happy to see the change? Are you open to the change?
I'm always open to diversity. I'm just not open
But
to
how
this
do you-
price gouge. Like, this is
right.
ridiculous.
The prices,
Right.
I get that. But in terms of the demographics, like it's not an all black community anymore.
Not anymore. I'll never forget. There was one night I was leaving here from the station. It was like 1:00 in the morning. Just at the time I was with my parents and whatnot, driving down the block, and you see two white people walking their dog.
Not scared at all.
No,
Not scared at
and
all.
we're talking off of Slauson, Slauson and 54th, and I'm like, wait, this ain't normal.
No, I mean, I guess it's kind of the new norm. I don't, like I said, I'm one for diversity.
Yeah.
Because I went to an elementary school where at Angeles Mesa, there were no white kids. You know what I mean? There were Hispanics and there were black kids.
Yep.
At Audubon, I think I remember like a white kid the entire 3 years I was there. At Crenshaw,
Yep. Crenshaw.
maybe one. And it's just, it's nice for diversity.
Yeah.
I just don't like what it's doing as far as it's pricing us out.
Okay.
It's that's my issue.
I was
Like,
definitely pushing us out of these neighborhoods that we grew up in.
All right.
dude, going Crenshaw, like you said, Crenshaw and 52nd, white little kid running down the street playing. I was like, I couldn't even go outside.
Exactly.
This is different. I want to no longer take the cops come over here and say, "Oh, wait a minute. Let me try something."
Well, y'all crazy. So let's bring on two of my first two guests, some subject matter experts, to contribute to this conversation on Let's Talk About Gentrification. First, we have Damian Goodman, who is the executive director of the Crenshaw Subway Coalition. And joining him is Odesse Riley Jr., president and CEO of WLM Financial. Please welcome Damian and Odesse to the front page. How you guys doing?
Good morning, Starlett. This is Odesse. I'm doing great.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for waking up with us this morning. So you heard our conversation here. We all know that gentrification is happening throughout South Los Angeles, throughout Inglewood, Compton, any place there are change in demographics, change in our retail, change in our housing. But people see gentrification differently. So I want to ask, and I'm going to start with you, Damian, how do you define gentrification, and what is your personal school of thought on the process of gentrification?
So at the Crenshaw Subway Coalition, we ascribe to the LA Tenants Union definition, which is basically the gentrification is the displacement and replacement of the poor for profit.
Okay.
I want to just say that it's not natural. It is man-made, and much as slavery was man-made, it can be unmade. Its roots are colonialism, it's white supremacy, it disrupts family ties, it uproots communities, it erases cultural heritage of working-class families and communities of colors. And it's got a lot of code words, like urban renewal, revitalization, vitality, and they all circulate around the accumulation of wealth through dispossessing the poor from their housing and community. I try and make it plain because a lot of people confuse, and it's largely because there's been an absence of success here. Uplift of communities that is rooted in a bottoms-up approach that really improves the condition of existing residents and neighborhood change with gentrification. Gentrification is synonymous with displacement. Gentrification is synonymous with cultural erasure. And so if that's the case, it's a real simple question when you ask it of people. Is it good that low-income people and elders are being displaced, that black people are being displaced? Is it good that a community that is historically people of color is now being culturally erased? And the answer to those things is obviously no. Now, we'll get into, I'm sure, many of the many things that we have done at the Crenshaw Subway Coalition as leaders in this space to illuminate the conversation, but also promote an alternative form of community uplift known as community wealth building, whereby processes and projects and improvements in the community at their root seem to improve the condition of existing residents without displacing those who are vulnerable. And I just got to say, as black people, I'm really very concerned that anyone would, and I'm not saying you are, Starlett, or anyone else, but just in general, that anyone would consider that we have to sacrifice those who are disproportionately poor, disproportionately marginalized in favor of a new Starbucks or a new, as I like to say, Cheesecake Factory justice. Okay. The increase or influx of retail that historically has been deprived of our community for no reason other than anti-black and, in general, racism.
Okay. Odessa, how do you define gentrification, and kind of share with us your personal school of thought on the process?
I define gentrification as the process of taking property that has been underused and injecting money into it to make a profit. Okay. And the issue with how this generally ends up turning out, it's usually, if we go back to some of the first neighborhoods who were gentrified, you look at Soho in New York, you look at how Venice changed, how now, let's say, Inglewood has started to change. What you end up with is businesses or developers who realize that they can get land in a certain community for a price that's much cheaper because that community does not value its land. Mm-hmm. And the problem that I run into is, as a young man born and raised in Inglewood, you see the changes start to happen as that community is a community at some point that people do not take a lot of pride in. Hey, I really want to have ownership here. Hey, I really want to make change here. It's more, hey, I want to get up and I want to move out of here, as I was when I was younger. My goal was to get out of Inglewood.
Why was your goal to get out?
Because at the time it was rough and tough, and it didn't seem like it had a lot of opportunity for a young black man. Mm-hmm. But no one was teaching me that, instead of getting out, you should be going to school, getting your money up, and then coming back here and investing in this area. Mm-hmm. Because right now this land is cheap. You can do anything you want here if you choose to. But I was taught, hey, move on up to Beverly Hills. Hey, move to Palisades. Move to the Valley. Move somewhere where you're going to be safe. Instead of saying, hey, you can navigate this area because you are safe here, because everyone knows you. Buy things, bring your business here, do all those things, and then make sure you can't be gentrified out by finding other like-minded people in that community that can make those changes. But what we do is we look for places that, instead of saying, I'm going to go to the Fox Hills Mall because that's what's close to me, I'm going to go to the Beverly Center, like all my friends went to when we were younger.
So, as you mentioned, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. And then when they buy the Fox Hills Mall for a cheap price, put some different things in there, we're all back at that mall, mm-hmm. but now we don't have any stake or ownership in it.
So in your definition or in your example of gentrification, you mentioned Soho and Venice. So in your opinion, gentrification is not a black community thing. It happens in every community, irrespective of race and culture.
Whether it's Echo Park, whether it's Inglewood, where it's Venice, it's anywhere where you see, hey, I can get land for really cheap. First, you see the artists move in. It starts to become an artsy hub, and then you see, as Damien was saying, you see the coffee shops, the Starbucks start to come. Then you get Pilates, and you just start to see the trickle. Everything that you want in that community that's high-end starts to come in, and then the people who don't use it are like, what is this? So, I have some good friends and clients who've moved into Inglewood, and the first thing they say is, I want to, when are we going to get a Starbucks? When are we going to get a Pilates studio? When are we going to get a Soul Cycle?
Now, are these black? Are these black clients?
These are black people that are making good money. But the first thing I tell them, I was like, you are part of the gentrification. You are helping gentrify the neighborhood because the things that you want coming here are at a price point that the average hardworking African American or Latino can't really afford.
Now, we've often talked about, economic leakage in our community. I mean, the dollar doesn't recycle in the black community like it does in other cultures. We do. We leave South LA, we go to the West Side, and we shop, and we, have other amenities that we don't have locally here in our black community. So I know a lot of friends, even growing up, we would leave our areas and go to the West Side and other areas to shop because what we wanted wasn't local.
There's a Trader Joe's in my hood.
What we wanted wasn't local. Exactly. So Damien, let me ask you, because historically, there has been some hesitancy, or there's been some negative connotations when it comes to gentrification, because in the past, the laws like eminent domain were used to take people's houses. So in your opinion, eminent domain is outlawed. They don't use that anymore here, here in Los Angeles. So in your opinion, what systemic tactics are being used today to gentrify our communities?
Well, they do still use eminent domain, Starlett.
They do? Okay, I'm sorry. Correct me. The Metro project
that goes through the Crenshaw district in Inglewood is one of the more recent examples where lots of places, and then, we really had concerns with the selection of locations was used, and, you can still use it for public infrastructure, and with the Kellogg agreement or Supreme Court decision, you can actually even use eminent domain for the endearment or the enrichment of just basic retail and commercial operations, private operations, not just public.
All right.
And I think just in general, we got to back up a little bit. And we always do this. We have a whole gentrification 101. It's a process that is a minimum of 4 hours. Ideally, it's over several weeks, but even the crash course is a minimum of 4 to 6 hours where we break this down. And one of the first things we try and get people to understand is that gentrification is not a bunch of individual decisions. I heard Brother Des say that we don't value our community. No, it's not that we don't value our community. I have lived in Leimert Park for 28 years. We have been in South Central my entire life, and there has never been a lawn that was owned by a family, a black family, or a brown family. There's never been an apartment complex that was owned by a black mom and pop landlord that wasn't taken care of. I mean, there were some that were dilapidated, but everyone that had the resources to take care of their front lawn did. It's when you got to the commercial boulevards, which have always been and continue to be owned by outsiders and not those that are black and brown, that we began to think that certain things weren't done. And it gets to a larger question, right? Who controls the land and who controls the decisions in these communities, and who are making conscious identification of certain areas, the renaming, the inclusion of new of retail, all of these many things that go into saying that this area that was typically undervalued, not by us but by others, is now going to have increased value and thereby put pressure and price out the long-term residents who are disproportionately working class, low income, and people of color. Those aren't decisions we're making. Mm-hmm. We didn't make a decision to invest, billions of dollars in public infrastructure that sent a signal to the global real estate market that you should invest in the Crenshaw and Inglewood community. We didn't make a decision to bring a multi-billion-dollar stadium backed by multiple billionaires, two of the richest families in America, two multi-billion-dollar stadiums into Inglewood that sent a signal to the real estate market that now Inglewood was a town that was up and coming. We didn't make a decision to ultimately redmine our community, to deny us of supermarkets that provided quality produce and organic foods. Those are all decisions that are made by people who don't look like the folk on this call right now, who are in boards and in corporations that are national and multinational. So let's understand, just in general, just as we have had this conversation and this reckoning about anti-black racism as a systemic conversation in the wake of the George Floyd uprisings, that we have to have a systemic conversation as it relates to gentrification, because we are operating under the threat of just white supremacy and colonization in its rawest form.
Okay, fair enough, Odessa. Damien just talked about the systemic impact of gentrification, and in your opinion, what role do we play in gentrifying our own communities?
The biggest role I see that we play is when you want something from someone else that you don't see in yourself, you're going to have an issue. Earlier I heard the young man said he's happy for the change, but not the price gouge. And I definitely get that. You want the neighborhood to get better, you want the parks to be better for your kids, but you're like, well, I don't want rent to go up. But the problem is as Damien was saying, the apartments, the houses, the land we live on is not owned by us. And, some of that comes from a long time ago when there was redlining. In some communities, there still is. But at some point, we have to see that there is value in our own things and that we start to gentrify ourselves when we believe that the grass is greener in another community instead of staying in Lamert Park, like Damien said, and trying to invest in it. A lot of my friends, we grew up, we became successful or semi-successful, but we still didn't choose to purchase in our neighborhoods,
Why do you think that is?
I'm sorry, I got to interject, because I got to tell this story. Here's a sister who is an active member of Downtown Crenshaw. I got to give my plug, Starlett. We don't buy them all, y'all, but not just buy it. It's about stabilizing the key commercial center in all of Los Angeles. The fight's on for our bid, which was the highest bid. Most generous terms. Go to downtowncrenshaw.com, at Downtown Crenshaw, on Facebook and Twitter, and DT Crenshaw, on Facebook and Instagram, and DT Crenshaw on Twitter. But this sister is an educated black woman who's married. Her and her partner collectively have over $300,000 in debt. She's under 35 years old. She's living right now in her parents' home in Ladera Heights, where she grew up. And it's not as though she didn't do exactly what we told everyone to do. Went to the nice private school in high school, went to private school in college, got the graduate degree. We are dealing with a certain set of circumstances that is a product of the historic black-white wealth gap. She can't even imagine buying in the community she grew up in.
The question would be,
it's not that she doesn't want to buy.
Hold on, Damien.
Okay, Damien. Let Odessa respond.
The price that she's in debt. I'm in mortgage and real estate. I have clients that come in who fit that demographic you're talking about. Highly educated, income $150,000, but then you look and you see that their debt is $400,000. And one of the things I try to teach people is you have to make sure that the education you have has the ROI. If you're going to become a therapist or a psychiatrist or something that's going to be a service-initiated job, you have to make sure then you don't go to the most expensive school for that, because the system is set up for you to put yourself in debt, and then you can't afford to become a homeowner because now your debt to income is too high, and you can't achieve what is known as the American dream of ownership and things like that. So how do we start to teach our children that you do not want to go possibly to the most expensive schools? You just want to get a good education. You can get the same education at Northridge as you do at possibly USC if you are one who's going to go there and study and make sure that the job you're taking on is only going to be $50,000 to $60,000 a year because you want to stay within your community. But you're not going to.
Well, I know the cost of the program of masters in social work at Northridge ain't a whole lot cheaper than it is at USC. It will shock you that the law degree at UCLA is higher than the law degree at Harvard Law. So if you want to get into public interest law and make $45,000 to $50,000,
I'm just saying there's a way that
black and brown tenants. It's just the reality. I mean, I do agree.
You can go to junior college.
Okay, you guys. Okay.
Yeah, it's only one at a time. It's hard on the radio, brother.
I know. Okay, you're listening to 102.3 Radio Free KJLH, Compton, Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Inglewood. And before we go to a commercial break, we are going to take a caller. And if you want to ask a question of Damien or Odessa, but before we do that, Odessa, you're a realtor. What has been your experience working with black sellers? Do they mostly sell their homes to other black people, or do they sell their homes to others?
I mean, just Inglewood, let's see, Baldwin Hills, Ladera, Windsor Hills. One of the biggest things you'll see is, as an African-American realtor, you will come in, you will give your pitch, you will say who you can sell it to, how you're going to market it. And one of the things you'll get from one of your elders is, do you have the relationships to get me the highest price for my home? And the fact that most home ownership in our community is by people who are elders, a lot of the time, all they see is what is going to be the bottom line. They say, I want to make sure this community has some people that look like me in it. But when it comes down to it, it's this person can get me $900,000 and this person can get me $800,000. I'm selling to $900,000, even if they don't particularly need the money. And also, they bring in a realtor an insurance person who doesn't look like them. And one of the biggest things I always try to explain is we always say we'll support a business when it's selling food or when it has a product that's a low-end price point, we'll go to our people. But when we want to get something, the things that are actually going to build wealth in our community, buy your car from a black dealership, use a black realtor, a black doctor, those things that are going to be income that stays within our community, we go to someone else. And it's sad to see it happen over and over and over again. And it's something that is internally in us that we have to work on, because we have the skill set, we have the knowledge, and we have the education to be the most successful in those fields. But we don't believe in ourselves enough to support each other in those fields. And I mean, I lose out all the time when it comes to, oh, well, I just thought they'd have a better clientele to get me the highest price.
Okay, so again, we're going to open up the phone lines. Forgive me for not giving the number here. Give us a call at 520-KJLH. That's 520-KJLH at any area code. Bobo, I saw you shaking your head when Odessa was speaking.
No, it was just he made a good point about the buyer's market and how people sell homes. Like when my father moved, when we moved out of the neighborhood over near Western and Vernon, he went to a black realtor, but the black the guy that sold the house literally only put it in a certain newspaper. He only put it in Latino newspapers. Wasn't in the Sentinel, wasn't in no black media or anything like that. And then I'm looking at now, like I have a auntie, which is his sister, my father's sister. Auntie is 87, 86, and she lives alone. She's capable of living alone, and she lives in the Windsor Hills area. I can't even tell you, because I go over there and I help her with little things here and there. When I open her mail, she asks me to open her mail, check her mail. How many different, it's going to sound really racist, but looking at, you can look at a name and tell what someone's ethnicity is. How many white realtors are trying to buy her home? And it's just, I don't know.
My family lives in View Park, and there were a couple of white girls who were going around knocking on doors, asking people if they wanted to sell. Odessa.
Now, but see, again, y'all, this is not, I mean, we make it seem, and I understand, realtors are different than realtists. I understand that history, and if you don't know it, y'all should Google it. It's how they Board of Realties operates in one of the oldest buildings in the city, or the oldest building in the city. But I think it's a mistake to see the realty industry as separate and a part of this system. No, you have a lot of people who are black, who are doing the same thing that a white realtor would do. That is to say, convince a black seller to sell to a white family, or even worse, convince a black seller to sell to a flipper or to a corporation. Right? I don't see them as separate, and I think one of the big mistakes is that because these are independent businesses, that we think that they're necessarily on our side. No, there's a whole lot of folk who are not on our side who are cashing in. Because I can guarantee
since the beginning of time.
Those, you got to. It's one at a time on the radio, brother, because it's hard to hear when two talk. It's one of the biggest challenges that we have, and what you will notice is your family that's in View Park or in South LA have the same income profile as the family on the West Side, and I can guarantee you, they're not getting as many knocks on the door. They're not getting as many things in the mail, and the reason that is because there has been a historic undervaluing of the community, and there has been a systemic and overall belief that because the land has traditionally been undervalued, not by us but by outsiders, that there's more money to be made through the redevelopment, through the renovation of these homes, through these new amenities coming. Again, that's not a decision we made. We've been holding down the hood for a long time. We made a decision to invest in this community and have remained in this community. Others divested from the public and private sector, and others have decided now's the time to invest after gaining injunctions, implementation of infrastructure, inclusion of major stadiums. These are all bigger decisions than any one of us have made on the line.
Okay, we got a bunch of callers that I want you guys to be able to get to. And we're going to start off with Wanda. You're on the front page with Odessa Riley and Damian Goodman. What is your question for our guests?
It's not a question.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm sorry. Good morning.
Everyone that's on. I'm hearing problems.
Okay.
Let's solve these problems.
Very good.
And let's stop saying we and say I am doing.
Okay.
God bless.
Thank you.
Well, can I speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I started a fund called the For Our Roots Investment Fund, where I took 19 students from the Real Estate Associates Program, LA, which Starlett introduced me 2 years ago, and took those students and we invest in the community. We're about to close on a property on Highland in Mid-City, $1.25 million. We took our money, the 19 of us. We're buying a fourplex. We're not moving anybody out of the units, and we're trying to stay within South LA because we know the market. You know, we take a lot of investors, and they're always investing out of state or in towns that are cheaper. But our thought process is, why wouldn't we just invest within our community? And why won't you put your dollars where put your money where your mouth is? Mm-hmm. I'm always willing to invest within my community. But when I see the people who are the most adamant about somebody coming to take something, I say, well, let's buy some stuff together. I never hear them saying, let me go to my bank and bring out some money and let's make this happen. Because at the end of the day, in America, it's dollars and cents, period.
Well, I am trying to stay in the community. So that's my I, Wanda. I am trying to buy.
And I'm going to go to another caller. Dr. Rosie, you're on. Good morning. You're on the front page.
Good morning. I want to make a comment, but want to ask a question first. I want to know if Odessa is a part of the realtors or the realtists. I want him to answer that for me.
I am a realtor, and I have been to the realtors community. I honestly don't look at myself as either.
No, that's okay. You answer my question. You're part of the realtor. That's the white association, and not the realtors, the black. Okay. Now, here's my point that I want to make. When you all get to talking, you need to backtrack and talk to some elders who really know what's happening in the city of Los Angeles. One thing about our young people, they take off where they are, never backtrack and get the historical facts so they can understand what's going on with black folks. If you think back in 1965 when the riot was here, all of these business owners, they never sold these business, you all. They never came back. They left after the riot. And all they did was rented these buildings out that they didn't keep up. They wouldn't allow certain major stores to come in, and that devastated our community. And we keep forgetting about the historical redlining that still goes on, and we want to blame ourselves for everything. We don't have enough education. We don't have enough of this. When we look at what is really happening, it makes a difference because people want they want what they call the best. And then black people still think white folks' ice is colder. Now, so we have to really look at that. Stop blaming ourselves and build from here and look at who the real enemy is, and then we need to fight against that. Because historical, that's what we got to look at. A lot of black people list their house with Hispanics because they would say, well, you know, they buy more houses. They got more money. If you really want it sold, you list it with a Hispanic broker. I used to be in real estate. I hear all of this. So you guys come talk to me or some of the elders because Damon, I love what you're doing. I'm honored with you. But a lot of these other people, they ain't doing nothing but flipping their lip. They don't know nothing because they have not asked anybody anything. So you guys go get the real information before you start trying to diagnose black folk because you don't have it right.
Okay, thank you so much for your call, Dr. Rosie. We're going to go. Damien or Des, did you want to respond to Dr. Rosie?
I will say I try to make sure I know my history.
You guys are talking over each other. Des, go ahead.
I would say I try to make sure I speak to my elders and know my history. You know, when it goes down to redlining, like right now we have an issue with Bruce Beach. You know, that's in the news. We look at redlining and how, you know, white agents would tell sellers back in the day that, well, as African Americans are moving in the community, you're going to lose, you know, value. You should move out of here. And then line these properties or these areas up where they could only put lower income people. And I definitely get that we have had a lot of oppression and a lot of things weighed against us. But one of the things I always try to make sure that I say to young men or women who are looking to buy is you can buy in a neighborhood that's already on the upswing, or you can move to a community that actually needs your dollars and cents and try to make something of it. Like, you know, do you go to the city council meetings? Do you do these things? Are you active in the area that you live? Do you know about the plans that Damien was speaking on that are coming in? And are you active in making sure those plans are going to include you and your people? You know, at some point, it has been really heavily weighed against us, but what is your fight in the game is what I'm always going to say.
Okay, we're going to have to go to a quick commercial break now. And Odessa, you're going to be leaving us. So how can people get in contact with you?
Well, you can get in contact with me. I'm in Inglewood, and my number is 310-905-7421, or you can find us at WLM Financial. We are a real estate and lending company, and if you're looking to invest in your community, it's forourroots.com. That's FOROURROOTS.com, and we are a real estate investment fund, and we're here to help.
Thank you so much, Odessa. And Damon, you're going to come back and join us later on in the show. Our conversation today is let's talk about gentrification. On the other side of the break, we're going to meet a young man who has come up with a plan, Dr. Rosie, on how to embrace, prepare for, strategize around, and redefine gentrification for our generation. So come back. Join me, Starlett Quarles, right here on the front page, 102.3 Radio Free KJLH. We'll be right back. Welcome back, front page family, to the front page. If you're just now joining us, I'm your host, Starlett Quarles, and we'll be here all week long having these spirited conversations for my generation. The current time is 5:18, and it is 55 degrees, and it's going to be a beautiful 84 degrees later on today here in Los Angeles. So glad that it's sunny. What are we doing? We are talking about gentrification, and I want to bring on and introduce you to a young man that is actually trying to help not gentrify our communities by buying up property in the Black Los Angeles. And his name is Danny Carter. He's the co-founder of Buy Back the Block LA. That is kind of like a tongue twister, especially when you got lips. Buy Back the Block LA, which he launched as an effort to refocus the Black community on Black empowerment and group economics. Please welcome Danny Carter to the front page. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Good, good. We just had a spirited conversation on gentrification with Odessa Riley and Damian Goodman. And at the top of the hour, or not the top of the hour, the top of the show, when I had them on, I asked them to define gentrification in their school of thought. So I'm going to ask you the same question. How do you define gentrification? And what is your personal school of thought on the process?
Well, the way that I define gentrification is as economic warfare.
Economic warfare.
Economic warfare.
Elaborate.
And that warfare is being waged on the Black community by the same community that enslaved us, the same community that put us through Jim Crow, the same community that crack bombed us and miseducated Black people, which they're now using to their advantage to be able to buy property from Black people who don't know what they're sitting on. And I don't know how you classify that as anything else but warfare.
Okay. So tell us about your inspiration for Buy Back the Block LA. Tell us more about your organization, BBB LA, and what it is that you do here in Los Angeles. I know it was inspired by Nipsey, so tell us how you came up with this organization.
No problem. So, like you mentioned, after our brother Nipsey was killed, actually, literally on this day, March 31st, we just decided that enough was enough, right? We've seen them take our leadership, through state-sanctioned violence. We lost every one of the leaders that we had in our community, and Nipsey was getting ready to be another one. He was on the path to be another Fred Hampton. So now we said, all right, look, we can't allow them to continue to take our leaders and not respond. So what we wanted to do was try to honor the portion of Nipsey's legacy that had to do with property ownership and real estate. And so we formed a group, and we started teaching people about how we buy and rehab houses across the Midwest where, the dollar travels a little further, and how we can do that together through group economics.
And you started in the Midwest, and you're just now bringing this organization out here to Los Angeles?
So, no, we started here in L.A. We had our very first meeting 2 years ago in July at Hot and Cool Cafe in Leimert, and we've been meeting pretty much every single month since then.
Okay, and how many people in your group?
So the original Founders Club, of people who invested together through the group economic project, it's about 21 people. But the people who travel in and out of our group and attend our meetings, I mean, it started to get really, really big before before COVID. So we got featured like in the Hollywood Reporter and on Baller Alert, and the next thing we knew, we had over 100 people at our meetings who were showing up.
So elaborate more about group economics, because one of the things that we often have challenges with when it comes to Black people is trusting each other with money. So have you had any challenges trying to get people to purchase together? And if not, how have you been able to mitigate trust issues when it comes to money and mobilizing our dollar as Black people?
Well, if there's been any challenges, I haven't seen them.
Okay, that's good.
If there's some naysayers out there that didn't put their money in the pot because they thought this, that, and the third, then I never heard from those people. They stayed quiet.
Mm-hmm.
What we were able to do to stop, to lower the amount of, like you said, mistrust, is just we were just transparent. We're just transparent. It's very simple. It's not rocket science. If you want people to trust you, put all the cards on the table.
Okay.
The only people who have something to hide those are the people who are not going to be transparent. So I don't care if we're talking about your church, your mosque, any organization that you're putting money into. If you can't go to them and say, hey, I want to see down to the penny where the money that we're putting into this organization is being spent, they got something to hide. We don't. So that takes a lot of things right off the table.
Okay. So part of your model is embracing Black empowerment. Do you think the majority of us don't embrace it? And you mentioned two types of Black people. What are the two types of Black people?
The two types of Black people are the Black people who recognize white supremacy and then dedicate themselves to overthrowing the system. And the other type of person is the type of Black person who recognizes white supremacy and then goes back to picking the cotton. Okay. There's literally only two types of Black people. Okay. All Black people recognize white supremacy. Not all are brave enough to fight it head on.
Okay. And so when it comes to embracing Black empowerment, how do you incorporate that into your model?
Well, it's the basis for everything that we do. Black empowerment is a code, and the problem that Black people have had over the years is that we don't operate by a code on a consistent basis.
Okay.
The code being Black empowerment means I don't steal from other Black people, I don't kill other Black people, I don't harm other Black people, I don't misuse other Black people. So that guides everything that we do. And that means also being Black first in everything we do. Every single decision that you make needs to be from a Black perspective. So if you come to our group, don't come to me with the business of the Democratic Party or the business of this community or that community. That's not my concern. My concern is the Black community first and foremost.
Okay, very good. I know that we have TJ on the line, and TJ used to live here in Los Angeles, and he's now moved to Atlanta, and he agrees with your philosophy, and he has been working with Black people. So I'm going to bring TJ in. TJ, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
So I'm having a conversation here. I'm sure you listened to my conversation here with Danny, and we're talking about group economics. And I know that one of the reasons that you've left California and started buying outside has been your inability to mobilize and buy property here in Los Angeles. So share a little bit about your philosophy on group economics and how we can pull our money together to be able to buy back our own blocks.
Well, first of all, I like to follow the money. And when I realized that Silicon Valley had extended out to Los Angeles to create Silicon Beach and was in L.A. paying cash for homes and not using the bank, closing escrows in 15 days, I started getting in position and said, it's time to start building. We have to retrain our people and train them in the carpentry so we can, instead of flipping houses, we can start building tracts, buying land and start building homes. That way we can employ everybody in our communities by teaching them the trades. We got labor at a historical high right now. It's not enough people to do the labor. So what brought me out to Atlanta, to the South Carolina, et cetera, was the fact that I was able to come out here and buy large parcels of land, 10 acres, 15 acres, 50 acres, and I can build houses unlimited. Instead of running around L.A. trying to buy one house over here, another over there, where I can only help a few people, I can help more people. So I also, went to the school district, Compton School District, became an advisor to Compton, to Inglewood, and help them to reposition themselves, meaning we got to get into the position to start creating land developers, because this is our new wealth. So for example, here in Atlanta, the old mayor, Maynard Jackson, rest in peace, who the airport is named after, Hartford Jackson Airport, he knew that the future corporations were moving into Atlanta, so he created a minority participation requirement in developing of that airport. So meaning he didn't create it to where people can come in and get a good job. He fixed it to where companies, black-owned land developing companies, could come in and get contracts, billion-dollar contracts, building the airport. So just yesterday they had a sister that came in, a black woman, who came in and said she's the one who built the awning over the airport. So that's why I'm here, because I haven't seen that model added in Los Angeles before. Meaning they'll say we can get jobs in Los Angeles, but they didn't say we can get, or black-owned companies are guaranteed 70% of the contracts of developing this area. That's why I wrote my book, Monetizing Gentrification, because there is a lot of money being spent, and we want our share of it. Let me tell y'all how to get our share.
So, Danny,
so how do we...
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
So how we get our share is pivoting into the land development sector. So, from real estate attorneys, understanding these contracts, these deals, to developer, teaching our children from kindergarten how to build tiny homes. Mm-hmm. If your child at 7 years old learned how to build a tiny home from the ground up, plumbing, drywall, roofing, flooring, etc., it is an 80% possibility that he will grow up to be a multi-millionaire by the time of 18 if following the right suit. So that's why I go around doing all of these consultations and training and these keynote speeches around the country, because the whole country is pivoting into the right direction to accommodate this wealth that's being pumped into our communities that we are not participating. Most of us are not participating in because we're following the wrong blueprint.
Danny, I wanted you to respond or just to comment on what TJ just said, but also to ask you, does your group, are they thinking about real estate development as a strategy to buying back the block? And what have been your challenges here in Los Angeles? Because like TJ said, he had to leave because of the property values here are so high, and he can do more down south. So have you found challenges in terms of buying up property here in Los Angeles because it's so expensive? And have you thought about buying land and building from the ground up?
Absolutely. I believe that, what TJ said is actually 100% accurate, because Los Angeles has become a hostile environment towards black people in more ways than one. So we're starting to get squeezed out from an economic standpoint because, somebody asked me recently, hey, man, I know you teach and buy back the block, the classes and the investment classes, and you're showing people how to do things. I really want to buy a house in this neighborhood that I grew up in Lamert. How do I do it? The houses are going to $900,000. I said, man, I don't have a formula to teach you how to buy a $900,000 house. Mm-hmm. The only way you're going to be able to do that is to earn significantly more, and then you're still buying at the top of the market. So it's very challenging. Not to mention the fact that the model in San Francisco that's the prototype of getting the black population down to 5% and then kicking them out to the outskirts. That's what's happening in Los Angeles right now. Mm-hmm. Everywhere you look, the walls are closing in on you, either directly from the people who have always been your enemies, or they're new recruits, the quote-unquote people of color, non-black people of color. Mm-hmm. So now you have to deal with open white supremacy from the people who you've always had to deal with it from. Mm-hmm. And now you have to deal with their recruits and sympathizers, because if we're being honest, every single non-black group of people of color have shown at some point that they are anti-black on record. Mm-hmm.
You said we should stop saying black and brown communities.
Absolutely we should. How do you allow the people who colonize to label you and address you? And how is it possible that they address you at the same time that they're addressing a group of people who have shown on record that they are hostile towards your community?
Now you mean the Brown? Are you referring to Brown?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's on record. So if you go back all the way as early as 2008, Latinos have outnumbered whites on the LAPD. They also outnumber them on the sheriff's department. Black people, have you stopped catching hell at any point since 2008? So if there's really black and brown unity, how come things haven't slowed down?
Well, I know that we were talking here in the studio, Dorian and Bobo and I, and saying that our communities, South Los Angeles, the demographics definitely have changed. I mean, our local high schools are not predominantly all black anymore. They are predominantly all Hispanic, and and that Hispanics sell to other Hispanics. I'm not saying that that's good or bad, or it just is what it is. And so when we talk about, hold on, TJ. So when we talk about buying and selling to black people and being intentional when we buy our house or when we sell our house to try and get somebody black to buy it so that we can keep the culture and the economics recycling, we don't often see that. Right? So when you go to South LA and you try to buy it back into South LA, we saw this after the recession. This last recession, when black people tried to come back to South LA, they couldn't. Not only were they priced out, but culturally, people weren't selling to them anymore. I'm sorry, TJ, I cut you off. What did you want to say?
Oh, I wanted to touch on what you said a second ago. Another reason why I left is because when I was in Los Angeles, in Compton, I went back to the high school I graduated from, Centennial High School, in the Compton School District, and to give back, to help out. And like I said, I'm not a racist, but when I got there, I brought a lot of resources, a lot of friends. We came in there with Master P and Dr. Dre, and Dr. Dre gave the school district $10 million. But when I got there, I was able to monitor, make sure where that money went, and they redid the whole automotive shop of where I graduated from, which I'm a car builder guy. I'm a car guy, and that's where I graduated from. But my point was, I looked at us. We made up less than 3% of that whole school. Mm-hmm. So when I came in and started taking these kids on field trips and things like that, it was like 2 African Americans on the bus out of 30, But my whole thing is us being prepared and pivoting in this industry and benefiting from it, because it's a lot of money out here right now.
Absolutely.
We really don't have time to fight. We got to get in position. That's why I've been talking about this since 2013 when I was in Lamar Park telling people what was going on. People have the race is over, but what I like to see is we got situations where the money is right now is we got a lot of old people who literally don't have nowhere to leave their homes to, and the cities are getting these houses. We got abandoned buildings. The cities are taking buildings. The city has a lot of real estate that if you knew the right language that we can go in and ask for. You know what I mean? So instead of us leaving, we got people who pass away and leave their houses, their $900,000 houses, to their churches, to their HBCUs, et cetera, et cetera. We got to start reaching out to those people and say, hey, leave me that house. Leave our organization that house, and let us bring in the young people in the community and remodel these houses. Because I tell people all the time, they say, well, we don't have any money to get in this real estate investment game or to buy the block back, et cetera. But we do. It's a whole lot of money. I got people in Los Angeles who will sell their houses in Lamar Park for $1 million and then move to Atlanta with $1 million liquid and then don't know what to do with the money.
Our combined spending power nationally is $1.4 trillion. There's no way our community should be looking the way they do when we have that type of money at our, and when we have that type of money at our exposure. It's this, how do we wear our wealth? Right? Absolutely. So to the extent that we have all that money, our community should not be looking the way they do. We're going to open the phone lines. TJ, thank you so much for calling in and contributing to our conversation on gentrification and letting us know what you're doing down south, and good luck. But we're going to hear from some callers. Give us a call here at KJLH 520-KJLH 520-KJLH if you have a comment or question for Danny Carter of Buy Back the Block LA. Danny, that's such a tongue twister for me. So share with us some success stories of BBA LA. Have you guys been able to purchase and buy some property here in Los Angeles?
So not here in LA yet. So what we decided to do is, because we're just regular folks, right? Nobody in the group is rich. We're blue collar, we work. So we decided what we would do is follow Dr. Claude Anderson's blueprint and practice group economics.
Yes.
So what we all did was we took $3,000, put it into a pot. We were able to raise $51,000 between just regular working class black people who believed in something. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just one generation, it was a few.
Okay.
And we went to Indianapolis, Indiana, which is a market in the Midwest that has property that's very inexpensive. We bought a property, We rehabbed it. We sold it for a profit. We did that in what you would typically call, quote unquote, the hood, right off of MLK.
Okay.
Right, and we're improving neighborhoods there. Then we turned around and bought another property, renovated it. We're now renting it out to a Section 8 tenant, and most of the Section 8 tenants are predominantly our folks there. So what we decided to do was take that initial seed money, grow it to a certain point to where we can have punching power in this market, and then bring it back home.
So what are you looking to do here in Los Angeles? Are you looking to do the same thing, buy property, flip it, sell it to somebody black, or like Odest or even TJ recommended, buying a piece of property and developing it yourself?
So we're open to whatever strategies present themselves. Okay. You know, we're probably, if we decide to flip properties here, it's only, you know, a means to an end.
Okay.
Because we don't want to flip properties and hand them over to people who aren't from our community. So if we're doing it, it's only to raise the capital to eventually be able to buy things. But I think what TJ is onto is what's going to eventually happen. Black people in Los Angeles need to embrace the fact that you might not always be living in Los Angeles unless you want to live in a hostile environment. Because right now, if they blow us out of Leimert, say goodnight. It's over. That's the last stronghold of Southern California and of Los Angeles.
That's predominantly all black.
People are dispersed.
Yeah. I don't know, where is there an all-black community out here, Bubba? Where can you say, is there just like there's a Koreatown, there's a little Ethiopia? Where is there just a large population of just black people?
As I'm sitting here thinking, I wouldn't even consider Leimert Park all black.
No, the Save
like
Leimert Park campaign, I think, was spearheaded by some white folks.
Yeah, I don't think that there is a single area off top of my head right now that I can say is completely all African American.
Was it like that when you were growing up?
No, Leimert Park was all black. Like, you had like maybe a speckle of like a white person in Leimert Park, but not the way it is now.
Yeah.
Like it's. I have a family friend of mine who rents their home out like for Airbnb in Leimert Park, and he rents it out to a lot of different ethnicities. But he said most of the time that he gets is a lot of Caucasian people coming in just to look in the area to see how it is.
Okay. Wow, that's crazy. We're going to go to the phone lines. I'm sure you guys have some questions for Danny and just want to contribute to this conversation on gentrification. Denise, hi, welcome to the front page.
Hi, how are you this morning?
Good. You have a comment or question for our guest?
I have a statement.
Okay.
And nobody really talks about this, but it's going on a lot in South Central. Maybe other places, but I know in South Central. Predators, people in your family own property, and they pass, and nobody's names are on the deed. Okay. And then when you try to go and get a lawyer, the lawyer is in with the lender, find you a lender and give you a high interest rate. And you take the loan, and then it's time to come do it, and they're scaring out your house. You can't pay the loan.
Right. Yes.
So that's a new thing that's going to take in my neighborhood in South Central. I know 5 people that's happening to right now.
Danny, you ever? Thank you so much, Denise, for your comment. Danny.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. I mean, this has been, black people, come on now. You got to stop falling for the same pump fake. Every time they pump fake, you flying out of bounds. You got to stop. They've been using the same trick from day one. So now it's time to prepare, educate ourselves, and figure out how to battle against that. But I'm going to tell every single black person that's listening to me, you better embrace the idea of leaving.
I can't leave. I love L.A.
I love L.A. too much.
I love L.A. I'm going to make it work.
It was a statement that was made earlier about the Hispanic community coming back in the neighborhood and banding together. It is something that I do notice even in the neighborhood that I live now. A lot of Hispanic people will live, it'll be 2 families in a household, and they will
multiple families in a household.
They will stack their money, and that is something I don't see us as African Americans do. We want our own space.
Yes,
we want it at the age of 17. I'm ready to move out. I'm tired of this. Nah, Hispanics will live together till they're like in their 20s and 30s in a
and they
house,
help each other
and they
buy
help each other
a
and
house.
They buy it and they keep it in the family.
Yes, they do.
That's how that works, and I think that's an idea that we'll take, but man, I don't know if I want to live with my own cousins like that. I love my family, but to an extent.
Danny, thank you so much for contributing to our conversation. How can people find you and get involved with Buy Back the Block LA?
Yes, thank you. So thank you guys for having me. If you want to get involved with Buy Back the Block LA, the first thing I need you to do before you try to reach out is to embrace the idea of black empowerment. As I mentioned before, if you're going to come to us with the business of the Democratic Party, vote blue no matter who, or all of that, we don't want you. We don't need you. We can't use you.
Okay.
So first, embrace the idea of black empowerment. Secondly, you can reach out to us on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is Buy Back the Block LA. You can reach out to me on my socials. Yep, I won again is my handle. And, we look forward to seeing you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Danny Carter, for joining us. We're going to now go to a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to invite Odessa Riley back on to answer some of your questions on gentrification. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the front page. I'm your guest host this week, Starlett Quarles, filling in for Dominique DePrima. And our discussion this morning has been Let's Talk About Gentrification. We had Damian Goodman on earlier, and Odessa Riley is back to help us answer some of your questions. Odessa, you there?
How you doing, Star?
Good. Did you hear the question from the caller earlier? The comment?
Yes, Miss Denise. I actually wrote down a note. I was going to tell her if she has people who are losing their houses and having issues with financing. I may not be able to save it. But I can possibly give them some counsel. I've had a lot of that in Inglewood and a lot of that in South LA where people reach out, and I try to give the best advice possible on things they can do, some ways that they can mitigate their properties if they're in a reverse mortgage and they're trying to leave it to their kids. It's just kind of lining your game up correctly so that you can take advantage of your resources.
Got it. Okay, so Odessa, thank you for helping us here to talk to some of our callers, because I'm sure they have a bunch of questions. The phone lines are blowing up, and I hope to get to all of them, but we only got 5 minutes because we have a special guest calling in at the end of the show. So we're going to go to Stan. Hi, Stan. You're on the front page. Do you have a comment or question for Odessa?
Yes, I do have a comment. My name is Stan Jackson, and I heard our organization been mentioned by Dr. Rosie a lot earlier. I'm the president of the Consolidated Board of Realtors, the oldest black real estate trade organization in the nation. And I really appreciate the young brother from Building the Block. He had a lot of great ideas, but the one thing that I really want to mention to everyone out there is that he talked about getting black carpenters and stuff to build and do development. What we need more than that, in my opinion, is that we need to train black real estate professionals in the area of escrow, title, loans. That is the army that we need right now in order to defeat this gentrification, because we need more people to be trained about the real estate industry, and we need bigger numbers. At the Consolidated Board of Realtors, we are the local chapter of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, better known as NARAB. And we've been here since 1947. And I really like that the young brother went out and did some research, because you got to be operating off of history first. And if you know your history, it's going to allow you to know where you can chart your future. And one other thing that I like to mention to him is the fact that we have on April the 11th to April the 17th, we celebrate Realtors Week. Go to realtorsweek.com, realtorsweek.com. And on realtorsweek.com, we're going to be celebrating, teaching, and educating about the real estate market. We're going to be having first-time homebuyer programs. We're going to have sponsors available. Realtorsweek.com. Go there, sign up so you can get involved and you can get some understanding. And I'd like to really meet with that young brother from Build the Block.
Okay. Well, give us a call back. Give us a call back, and we'll give you Danny Carter's contact information. But Odessa, yes, Stan said we need a bigger army within the real estate industry when it comes to all the different disciplines, when it comes to real estate sales. But you and I both know that we also need more black people in the development side, on both the retail and the commercial side. And there's several organizations that help black people get into the development industry, like Odessa mentioned, the Real Estate Associate Program Los Angeles, as well as the Ross Program in real estate at USC. But Odessa, please respond to Stan about needing a bigger army in the real estate industry when it comes to all the different disciplines.
Oh, no, I agree with Stan 100% with what he was saying. Whether escrow, whether it's title, whether that's loans, we have to realize that the only way that you can really control your future is to own your business. And there's lots of businesses that are circulating in the world of real estate that are not populated by people who look like us. We need to make sure that we're not always just chasing the fast buck. On the realtor side or the realtist side, you're looking for that commission, you're trying to get paid, you're trying to get in and out and make as much money as possible. But there are things like escrow, title, loan officer, appraiser, things like that where you can set your career and make it into a real career where it may not be huge chunks of money, but it's really stable and you can build a business around it. And it also allows for you to then work within the world and know the ins and out of the paperwork that really make real estate work, because all real estate is paperwork. Now, development is knowing the nuts and bolts. The real estate is paperwork.
That is, and more than that, it's also very political. So you have to be able to be involved in your local politics, which we don't often talk about when it comes to gentrification, is understanding the local political power and how that's at play. So, Des, I want you to take on another call before we bring on our special guest. We have Jerome from Indiana, who is a member of Buy Back the Block. Hi, Jerome. You're on the front page. How you doing?
Good morning, Starlett. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good. Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, just want to make a quick statement. About Buy Back the Block. It's a great organization because it's kind of a combining of minds. You have people from real estate, from finance. You have educators, technologists, and I think one thing we need in our community is to be able to share information. I'm actually in the Baldwin Hills area.
Okay.
I'm in Indiana right now, Lake County, because there's a tax sale that's going to happen next month.
Okay.
So I think people need to go wherever there's opportunity. We can't be stagnant, and that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Oh, one more thing. There is a black supermarket chain in Los Angeles. It's called the Grocery Outlet Bargain Market. They're franchises. There's one in Compton, one in Inglewood, and 2 black-owned in Long Beach.
What's the name of that?
Grocery Outlet Bargain Market. That's pretty much primarily where I shop.
Thank you. Thank you so much for Jerome for that, and thank you for contributing to the conversation. And Odessa, just like TJ, people are going out of state to try to make it happen because it's more expensive, and they can't do the things that they want to do in real estate here in Los Angeles. What are your thoughts on investing out of state?
I think investing out of state is a good way to get into the market, but there's also, California is the size of the country. There are other parts of California that you can invest and get just the same prices. You can start looking in Bakersfield. You can be moving out to Paris. We have to stop thinking that everything that we need is outside of where we're at. And, everybody wants to have a passport, but nobody's ever driven through any of the states in the country they live in. So for me, I'd rather invest where I can actually put a touch to the people that I know and try to help the community I know. I was telling people, if you can't live in Inglewood, maybe you move to Lancaster for a minute. You build your area in that community, you buy a house, you get some equity, and you move back in some years when you can. Because Danny was saying and a few other people, you may not be able to afford to live in LA anymore. And we don't always get exactly what we want, but sometimes we have to put in the work necessary to grow. And maybe it's not us that can afford LA, but if we build a community in another area, maybe our kids can. It's about, you got to have a long-term play.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Odessa. I appreciate you contributing and calling in today and dropping some knowledge. You can be reached again where?
You can catch me on social media. Everything is always going to be Odest, Odest, whether that's on Instagram or Facebook. I'm pretty easy to find. Or you can find me at 4hourroots.com. Or just give me a call at 310-905-7228. That's 310-905-7228. Text message, phone calls. I'm always here for it.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll talk soon.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so joining us now, we have a special guest calling in from Minnesota. Mr. Najee Ali is on the line, and he's down there because of the George Floyd murder trial with Officer Chauvin. I'm sorry, Odessa. Najee, are you there?
Hey, Star. Good morning. Good morning to your guests. Good morning, Front Page family. And I am in Minnesota, but I'm at the Derek Chauvin murder trial.
Thank you for the correction. Thank you for the correction. I'm sorry. So tell us, how's it going down there?
Well, it's tense, very emotional, and I'm here in support of George Floyd's family, as well as Attorney Ben Crump, Reverend Sharpton, and the leadership here in Minnesota, as we continue to advocate for justice and demand justice for George Floyd. So it's something that I'm glad to be here. I promised the family when he was first murdered that I would return to help and stand with them, and I kept my word, and I'm back representing, L.A.
And so how is the climate? You've been there since when? Monday?
I know what we came in Sunday night for a rally sponsored by National Network and Reverend Sharpton, where the family spoke, Attorney Ben Crump and the lawyers spoke, as well as community leaders. So it's been a long trip, but it's been something very satisfying and very encouraging. Anytime we can come support a family in need of support, as the Floyd family is.
And so how has the community been? Have they been mobilizing outside of the courthouse? What has the climate been like since you've been out there?
Well, every day there's rallies in the morning. Then we watch the trial. And then there's a rally after the court proceedings are over with for the day outside the courthouse. So we have a lot of activists in the streets, especially when people get off work. We all are outside the courthouse, yelling and rallying and protesting and encouraging each other to stay and support this family.
Thank you. And how is the family doing?
They're doing the best they can. The one thing I can tell my front page family is the family of George Floyd is one of the best families you'll ever want to meet. And I'm just grateful to have a relationship with now and continue support, and hope to bring them to L.A. at some point once this is over with.
And so are they hopeful with the outcome? Are they, how are they feeling about it?
No, like as the brother said, his brother was tortured and murdered by Chauvin, and the whole world saw it. So the family, as well as myself and others here in Minnesota, are expecting a guilty verdict. Anything else is a travesty of justice.
Oh, yeah, absolutely,
Starlett.
Absolutely, it is. It would be. It just like it was with Rodney King. I remember, L.A. during that time, and I haven't watched. Have you guys been watching any of the trial on the George Floyd?
I've been keeping up with it. Okay. I haven't been able to sit down and watch the whole thing, but
I watched a little bit of it yesterday, and they had the young girl on who actually took the video footage. Najee, have you met her? Have you talked to her? The young girl who actually took the footage? Okay.
No, we haven't had a chance to talk to any of the people who have testified, for obvious reasons. But certainly we've been encouraged by the testimony, especially with the lady who actually worked as a dispatcher and ended up calling the police on the police because she saw that Chauvin was trying to kill Mr. Floyd.
Oh, yeah, that's what the young man who was the MMA fighter testified yesterday. I mean, this has been very emotional testimony because these are the people who were actually on the corner, who actually saw him die. I mean, you just sit there. They had a 9-year-old girl who was there with the young lady who took the video footage. I think her name is Danielle, and just this little 9-year-old girl testifying about actually seeing a man die. I mean, you just had a baby. Can you imagine your son being traumatized like that at 9 years old?
I just don't believe that they're trying to flip this into he died of a drug overdose. Like,
right?
Yeah, their defense. It's absolutely crazy how they're trying to, how the defense is trying to flip this. Najee, anything else you want us, the front page family, to know about what's happening down there in Minnesota?
Well, in closing, Black people are the only people in the world who are unjustly murdered by police and then blamed for their own murder. So I'll still be here. But if Facebook family wants, front page family wants to contact me, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Najee Ali, and my cell number is 323-275-8219, 323-275-8219. I'm here to be contacted if anyone wants to contact me for the front page family.
Thank you so much, Najee, for calling in. And thank you so much, Front Page family, for tuning in today. I'd like to thank my guests, Damian Goodman, Odessa Riley Jr., Danny Carter, and TJ Holmes for chiming in all the way from Atlanta. Make sure you join us tomorrow morning as we continue our series of conversations for a generation with our discussion, the Black experience at HBCUs versus predominantly white institutions. Right here on the Front Page with me, Starlett Quarles, signing off as my mama's child and my daddy's baby girl. God bless you.